Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Nate here. And deep within the dark, foggy marshes of northwestern Skyrim lies the eerie, inland town of Morthal. Ruled by their elderly psychic jarl, Ingrid Ravencrone, the people of Morthal have always understood their community to be a bit more in touch with the supernatural world than most. However, a series of particularly disturbing developments have recently rocked this otherwise quiet population, and turned them into a total frenzy. From the arrival of a mysterious Redguard mage accused of Daedra worship, to the death of a beloved young woman and her daughter in a suspicious fire, to great political unrest caused by Skyrim Civil War, Morthal has never been this on edge. Despite being perhaps the smallest hold capital in the province, it's clear that this city still offers much to be investigated and explored. And believe it or not, a look in Skyrim's game files reveals that Morthal is the center of an incredible amount of now cut content, and there are even more paranormal forces and hidden secrets than what most players have likely found, even after 8 years. So today we'll be taking a look at 5 things they never told you about Morthal in The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Starting off, before we get to the big stuff, let's begin today by taking a look at a single, curious resident of this town, who seems to be hiding something. Lamia is a middle-aged Nord alchemist who runs the Thaumaturgist's Hut, a potion shop where she sells all sorts of interesting magical concoctions and ingredients. Overall, she seems to be one of the few citizens of this now restless town that's divorced herself from all the infighting and chaos. She's not picking sides or lopping weird accusations at people. She just wants to make her potions and sell them at a fair price. And in return, pretty much everyone in Morthal likes her. She's one of the only characters that's not the subject of major allegations or suspicions that nobody has a bad thing to say about. Alas, it would appear that Lamia is an individual who's currently jockeying with her own demons. Or, more specifically, Daedra. And if her secret got out, she would probably lose that well-liked, popular status she's worked so hard to achieve and maintain. You see, on the top floor of the Thaumaturgist's Hut, which also doubles as her personal bedroom, the Dragonborn can find, lying on a drawer, a large bowl filled with skooma. Now, skooma is already a fairly controversial substance in Tamriel, no doubt made with some real-world parallels. And it's actually technically illegal to use or own in Skyrim. But it's what's next to all of this skooma that really tells us a lot about Lamia. There's 4 books on the same drawer, one of which is titled The Myths of Sheogorath, which, well, talks about Sheogorath, Daedric Prince of Insanity and Madness. And the text is typically found in the possession of his worshippers. Additionally, another one of those 4 books is called Wabbajack, which discusses Sheogorath's most famous artifact, the Wabbajack Staff. Skooma is also a substance heavily associated with Sheogorath, as he seems fond of the maddening effects it causes. And indeed, in the Elder Scrolls IV's Shivering Isles DLC, which sends us to his realm, we constantly find people using it. Heck, the Khajiits even call Sheogorath the Skooma Cat. It would appear that, given the books and the drink, Lamia is indeed a follower of Sheogorath. She is a Daedra worshipper. This certainly would not fly in a place like Morthal, even if Sheogorath's a bit less evil than most of his dark peers. I guess, in a place like this, everyone, even the well-liked sweet alchemist, has something to hide. Next on our list, Morthal's Jarl, the elderly Ingrid Ravencrone, is probably the strangest and definitely the most mystical of Skyrim's various hold leaders, as she's apparently a psychic. Yes, the woman indeed claims to receive visions from the 8, or maybe 9 divines, warning her of future events. As a character, Bethesda presents her as reasonable and genuinely concerned for the people she leads, a characteristic not many Jarls can boast. And overall, she's someone you'll probably like. Regardless, as we'll get into in a moment, she does have her enemies. That all said, an interesting fact about Ingrid is that she, evidently, was supposed to have a sister. RG Farseer is an elderly Nord that does not appear in the game, though is listed in its files. She would have lived in the small mining community of Stone Hills, just a short walk east of Morthal, and her relationship status with Ingrid is set to sibling. Now, everything beyond what I've just laid out regarding Argy is totally unclear, and honestly, there are so many underdeveloped plotlines in Morthal, it's difficult to really speculate what role she would have had in the game. She also has no unique dialogue. For instance, with a title like Farseer, I think we can safely assume that she would have possessed psychic abilities similar to her sisters, but who knows what she would have done with them? While Ingrid's visions are a big part of her personality, and she constantly seems to be talking about quote-unquote, something coming, Bethesda never did anything with that story. There's no quests or grand climax attached to it as is implied, and many have just assumed that maybe the writers originally intended to make a quest or two about Ingrid and her psychic abilities, though forgot about it, or decided to scrap that mission. Maybe Argy would have had some role in this unrealized narrative. I should also mention that there's a side quest in this town called For the Good of Morthal, in which one of Ingrid's stewards, a man named Gorm, reveals himself to secretly be plotting against his jarl, and asks the player to deliver a cryptic letter to the captain of Solitude's guard, Aldous. If we read that letter before delivering it, we'll find that it heavily implies Gorm and Solitude's guards are conspiring to overthrow Ingrid. But after we drop off the note, Aldous simply thanks us, and nothing ever happens. There's no coup, no replacement of Ingrid, nothing. So, many have also speculated that this could have been an unfinished plotline too, and maybe Argy, Ingrid's sister, was originally supposed to be her replacement in the event that this cut coup actually happened. Honestly, I just find this fact a bit more frustrating than entertaining, as the existence of Argy Farseer in the game's files really just puts a spotlight on how many opportunities in such an incredibly unique and interesting place were neglected by Bethesda. So, I guess while Argy may have been a Farseer, it would appear the writers who created her certainly were not. Coming in at number 3, speaking of Jarl Ingrid's family, let's take a more lighthearted turn. Yorick is the Jarl's son, and presumed heir to the throne. He's a young boy, somewhere between 10 and or 12 years old. Like his mother, Yorick too is also experiencing odd visions. Though, due to him being so young, he seems much less able to control them, and as a result, reportedly experiences horrific nightmares. Well, doom and gloom aside, if the Dovahkiin decides to sneak into his room in High Moon Hall and look underneath the boy's bed, you'll find a copy of the Lusty Argonian Maid book. It seems this child is secretly enjoying more, well, adult literature. A clear parallel to the behavior of many real-world kids. Except me, of course, just in case my parents are watching. Funnily enough, despite children not being pickpocketable, another fun fact about Yorick is that he actually has a bunch of items in his inventory. Mostly food and toys. So I think it's safe to say that this young Yorick is probably the most realistic child in the entire world of the Elder Scrolls. For our 4th spot, as mentioned earlier, one of the many recent events to have rocked this small town was the burning down of a small home, and the death of the mother and child living inside as a result. This would all just be a normal tragedy had it not been the fact that there was one survivor, the husband and father, a man named Hrogar, who, immediately after the incident, decided to move in with a new woman named Alva, who already had a reputation for being flirtatious. Many in the settlement, as you can imagine, suspect foul play, fearing that perhaps Hrogar and Alva killed the man's family so he could be with her. It's a terrifying thought, and most people desperately hope it's untrue, but can't help but theorize. Jarl Ingrid, curious herself, will promise the player some coin if you can investigate and get to the bottom of what's going on. Beginning the side quest, Laid to Rest. Ultimately, we discover a far deeper conspiracy at hand than what we were expecting. We end up learning that Alva is in fact a vampire, who enthralled Hrogar and burned his house down to get rid of his pesky wife and daughter. But it doesn't stop there. Turns out Alva's working with a nearby den of vampires, who have secretly been planning to enthrall not just Hrogar, but everyone in the city. hoping to turn the entire population into their blood slaves, one individual at a time, and eventually just take over the place outright. A frightening scheme, one we're very lucky to have caught in its early stages. In the end, after we defeat Alva in combat and inform Ingrid of the vampire plot, she'll send us and a small militia of citizens to storm the vampire's den, and put an end to the evil going on there. So, happy ending. Well, something you may find very neat is that if your character is a vampire when you visit Morthal, and if you speak to Alva, again, as a vampire, she'll actually have some unique dialogue, where she reveals her vampiric nature, apparently being able to detect our own, and informs you that Morthal's already being targeted by a coven, so you should go terrorize another town. Take a listen.
I know you for what you are. This town's blood is ours. Leave it. Now we must return to our roles, lest the sheep suspect the wolves.
It's a curious little detail, one you'd only find out if you A, became a vampire first, and B, decided to speak with Alva for some reason. And it's little things like this, that again, well, keep food on my table. Anyway, moving on. And finally, last on our list, Morthal is one of the few city names in Skyrim that we actually know the meaning behind. Most places, like Riften or Windhelm, have relatively ambiguous names that the game doesn't directly explain. However, one of the loading screens we can receive when traveling to or from Morthal asserts that this town was named for Morthal, an ancient hero to men in Tamrielic legend. You see, thousands of years ago, back in the early Merethic era, the human beings living in and around Cyrodiil were mostly enslaved by an elven civilization, known today as the Ayleids. Eventually mankind rose up, defeated the elves, and claimed Cyrodiil for itself. Well, Morthal was one of this rebellion's central figures. It's been so many thousands of years that it's now difficult to separate the myth from fact. But some say he was a winged bull man, directly sent by the gods to aid mankind in their struggle against the elves. Other sources merely refer to him as another human general. Whatever the truth, it is known that Morthal was the lover of Alicia, the woman who started the whole revolution in the first place, and would later be crowned the first Empress of Cyrodiil. So Morthal has quite the iconic namesake. Though, I should mention that Morthal is again in Skyrim, and this was a rebellion that occurred in Cyrodiil, not Skyrim. In fact, at the same period in time, Skyrim was its own independent kingdom, already long free of elven rule. So I'm not very sure why the Nords here decided to name one of their settlements after a Cyrodiilic hero. I don't know, maybe just solidarity or something. Whatever the case, it's a neat story. And with that, we are going to wrap up 5 things you probably never knew about the town of Morthal in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Which of these fun facts or tiny details did you find to be the most interesting? And what Skyrim or any other game Easter eggs do you know of that I haven't covered yet? Leave a comment down below. As always, like ratings are very much appreciated. Again, thanks for watching, and I hope to catch you all in my next video. Peace out, everyone.